Since it's Bible study, if you have a Bible, I'd like for you to go to the book of Philippians. And I want to take you to a very familiar passage of Scripture, something that that you are certainly familiar with, but it just kind of hit me today as I was thinking about some things yesterday and today, actually. And so I want to share this with you. Got a text from someone today that said ever since Sunday, they said, Pastor, I've been studying the Apostle Paul ever since what you preached Sunday about what he went through and how he continued to write the Gospels, or write not the Gospels, but write the Gospel and write those letters to those churches and encourage people. So I'm going to continue on. I the same thing with me. Just was thinking about the Apostle Paul and his words. And so I'd like to read from Philippians chapter number 3 and verse number 12. Philippians 3 and 12, Paul says, "Not that I have already attained or am already perfected, but I press on that I may lay hold on that for which Christ Jesus also laid hold of me. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead. I press toward the mark, the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ. Not that I have already attained or am already perfected, but I press on." Now, I was thinking about what Paul was saying here and how he was talking to the Philippians, and I can imagine as they were reading that letter for the first time, and Paul was telling them these things. I began to think about one thing I've learned over the years is to always listen to someone that is further along in an area that you are not. One of the things that I have gotten into here in the last year, the end of 22, is I've kind of gotten into a little bit of photography. I've got me a camera and a few little doodads here and there and a case and all of that. And of course, I'm surrounded by some very good photographers. I have some folks around me. My girls are very good with photography. My cousin, Brother Lucian, does a great job as well. And so ever since I started being intrigued with it, I realize where I am and I realize where they are. That doesn't intimidate me one bit whatsoever. It makes me want to learn from them. So ever since I started becoming intrigued with that, I've been asking questions because I want to learn. You know, what is aperture? What is shutter speed? What is the different types of cameras? What do you think is the best? What does this mean? And man, I've been on YouTube and watching stuff. And I remember when I was picking out my camera, I was asking Brooklyn about cameras, and of course her fiance Bryce, he's very knowledgeable when it comes to this stuff as well. And so I was asking them and telling them they were asking, now what are you wanting to do? What kind of photography are you wanting to get into? This makes a difference, and so man, they posed some questions to me that I didn't even think of. They said, this will determine what you need. You don't want to, buy something that you're not going to use because it's not an area that you're getting into. This is coming from people that have been there. They're much further along than I am, and they've learned some things, and they now can share that with me. There's some people that they won't ask anything. They'll just get into something, and I don't know if it's a pride thing or what, but there's no sense in being prideful if there's someone that knows more about something than you do. Learn from them. Don't let pride get in the way. And so that's what I've been doing. Well, the reason that I say that is the way the Apostle Paul talks in this in the text that I've read to you today. I feel like it was important for the Philippians to listen to what Paul had to say, because they're a great church, and he compliments them so very much, but they're not where he is. They don't have the experience that he does. They've not been through the good times or bad times that the Apostle Paul has been through. And so it's important that they listen to him. And of course, he encourages them, but he's also giving them lessons. He's teaching them, instructing them, letting them know, hey, you can expect this, you can expect that. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. What I preached to you Sunday, the words that he said to us on Sunday and said to them. Very powerful. So it's important that they listen to what Paul is saying to them. Now, I think Paul is, let me read it in a way of what I think Paul is saying. I think Paul is saying, I haven't made it yet. I haven't been perfected yet. I haven't made it to the other side yet. I'm not what I want to be. I'm not at that place yet, but this is what I do. This is how I live every day of my life. Let me give you some lessons, or a lesson in what I do. Now listen, Philippians. Listen to him, because he's going to tell you how he is surviving a day at a time. How he is surviving. He's writing this letter to you while under house arrest. He's writing this letter not to repreach what I preached Sunday, but the conditions that he is in right now is certainly not perfect. And so he's telling you, I haven't gotten there yet. But you see, he's a little further than they are. So listen. You don't know everything, so listen to somebody that's much further down the road. All right? Talk to us, Paul. Tell us something. Tell us something tonight. Tell us something on this first Bible study of the year. Tell us something, Paul. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended. It hasn't happened yet. I'm not perfected yet. I'm not there yet. And I want to tell you something. One thing I do. Now we'll get on to the rest of the verse, but I love how he starts. I haven't apprehended yet, but I want you to understand something. One thing I do. I think that's important. I don't think that's just connecting us to the next statement that he makes. I think Paul is telling us something by saying, one thing I do. I focus on one thing at a time. I try not to get too many things going. I pay attention to one thing at a time. And then he says, forgetting, and we'll break this down even more in just a moment, but he says, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead. I press toward the goal for the prize. Forgetting what's behind, pressing toward and moving forward to what is ahead. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a step. That sounds like Paul is just taking a step. He's just moving, and he's only focused on that one move. He's only focused on, it's not what's behind. He's pressing toward what's ahead, but it's just the focus of that one step. Not to get too many things, not too many irons in the fire, but this one thing I do, I just pay attention to that one step. You know, I remember when my journey began 2 years ago. I'll never forget Brother Brad Wilson, minister in our church. I'll never forget when he walked into our house 2 days after my diagnosis, and he walked in with a vision, something that the Lord had showed to him about me. And he said, Pastor, this is what the Lord has shown me. And he began to talk about the road that I was traveling, and he began to talk about what was on the left and what was on the right. Many of you remember that because he shared it with the entire church. But he said, your job is to not be distracted by what's on the left nor what is on the right, but to pay attention to what's ahead. And he said, and your job is to take one step at a time. Be focused on that one step. If I could say anything to anybody, if I'm in a place, if somebody's listening to this tonight and I am ahead of you in a journey, maybe you're battling something, a disease, maybe you're going through something. If I could say anything to you tonight, it would be exactly that. It would be what Paul said. This one thing I do, I pay attention to that one step. I try not to get ahead of the step. I try my best to just focus on and realizing not that I'm hurrying with a step. And I believe that's what Paul was saying too. It's not that I'm in a rush. I press toward the mark, but I'm not in a rush. I'm not trying to hurry a step. I'm focusing on that step because I don't want to rush that. I want to not only make the step, but celebrate the step. At the end of the night, I want to celebrate the step. I want to be able to say, I took a step. I moved. Now, Paul lets us know I'm forgetting those things which are behind me, and I'm pressing toward. I remember Brother Bobby that same weekend, Pastor Bobby McCool said to me, he said, Dan, listen. He said, any forward movement is success. He said, don't worry about how big or how little of a step you take. Just take the step. Any forward, he said, just make sure you're moving forward every day. It reminded me so much of the Apostle Paul, that you're pressing toward the prize. Doesn't matter how big, you're not in a hurry. You're just taking that step. I hope I'm helping somebody tonight with that, with whatever you're going through and whatever your circumstances might be. Just take a step. Any forward progression is success. And at the end of the day, celebrate movement. Celebrate that forward movement. Don't get in a hurry. Thank God for vision. But sometimes vision can overwhelm you. Sometimes vision, you can get so caught up in where you're going that you forget where you are. Sometimes you get so wrapped up that vision becomes overwhelming. Oh, I got to get here. I've got this destiny. I've got to make sure. Yeah, you got destiny. Yes, God's going to do something. Yes, there's going to be a miraculous thing that's going to happen. Absolutely. But your job is a step at a time. Let him take care of the timing. You just take care of any forward movement that you can make. And at the close of the day, celebrate that forward movement. Now, I've preached this verse for many years. I've read it for longer than I've preached it. But notice something that he says. I just noticed something a little different today. In moving forward, he says, forgetting those things which are behind me. And he said, then I press forward. I move forward. I take that step, that progressive movement, that whether I'm in a prison or I'm in a revival, whether I am whether I'm shipwrecked or I'm starting a church, whether it's an effectual door that's open for me at Ephesus or a guard is taking, it doesn't matter. I want to make a move. I want to make a progressive move. I'm pressing toward that mark. I'm pressing forward. But I'm forgetting what is behind me. It dawned on me today that when you look at those two things, forgetting and pressing, forgetting and pressing, forgetting and pressing. Notice this. Forgetting and pressing means one is mental and the other is spiritual. One is mental. Forgetting is a mental thing. Moving forward is a spiritual thing. So what you have to fight, see, some of you, the reason you are halted, the reason you have stopped is because the enemy is fighting you in your mind. He's holding up your future with your past. He's holding up what you can be by what you used to be. He's holding up your victory for tomorrow through the failure of your yesterday. And so it is a mental thing that you have to do. You have to forget. Listen to me. No matter what's behind you, whether it is failure or success, it's behind you. The step that you took is different than the step you need to take. The step you took is behind you. And you got to forget it. How do I forget it? That's a mental thing. That's a mental thing. You have to somehow in your mind conquer where you've been. Forgetting those things which are behind. Pressing toward. That's a spiritual thing. But what's going to happen is, if you don't conquer the mental, then you may not be able to do the spiritual. If you don't take care of what is battling you from the past, then you may not be able to grasp the spiritual part of moving forward, pressing toward the mark. I want to encourage someone tonight that your past is affecting you. Where you've been is affecting you. You got to press forward. To press forward, you got to battle that past in your mind, and mentally you've got to get the victory over that. And anytime, and we could spend a whole lesson on this. As you move forward, the enemy's going to try. Now, I'm not trying to suggest to you tonight that you have the power to forget, because you don't. You cannot say, I am going to forget the mistake I made. I'm going to forget what is behind me. I'm not suggesting that you have the power to do that. What I'm saying is that somehow in your mentality, somehow in your mind, you're able to forget those things which are behind you. The enemy comes along, and as you move forward, he throws that up to you. But mentally is where you have to say, that's behind me. And the Lord does not hold against me what is behind me. He doesn't keep me from moving forward because of something that is behind me. This one thing I do. See, I'm going to forget what's behind me, and I'm going to press toward. If you notice, Paul says, one thing I do. Okay? He doesn't say, this is what I do. He said, one thing I do. Well, when he says one thing I do, then he says, I forget what is behind me, then I press. Well, that equals two. So which one is the one thing? Which is the one thing that he does by mentioning two, which one is one. Well, I would suggest to you that Paul already mentions, if you'll notice in verse number 12, 13 is where he says, one thing I do. But the verse prior to that, he says, not that I've already attained or am already perfected, but I press on. So he already mentions pressing on. But he doesn't mention forgetting those things which are behind him until he gets to the next verse. And it's in the next verse where he says, one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind. Then he says, I press forward. I press toward the mark of the high calling, or the upward prize, as this version reads. So I would say to you that the struggle that Paul has moving forward, that is spiritual and that is important. And he focuses on that. But he's letting us know there's one thing. You have to forget what you have to let yesterday be yesterday. And you have to focus on the step. But you cannot focus on moving forward if your mind is continually on where you've been and what you've done and what is behind you. And there are a lot of things that we could talk about that are behind us. It's not just failures. It's even success. There's some people that have been so successful in the past that they have a hard time moving forward because they feel like their best days are behind them. There are a lot of things. There are broken things that are in our past. There are things that are not failures on our part, but they hurt us. They broke us. They wounded us. There's a lot that's back there. And Paul, I don't even know what all is behind him, but evidently that's the one thing. Evidently that's the one thing that Paul was saying. I'm already pressing, but the thing that can mess up my forward motion and movement is what's behind me. And so I got to make sure one thing. I gotta focus on that. A step at a time. Just some movement. Brooklyn and I, my daughter, we were talking today. We were talking about the theme of this year, expectation, and we began to talk about Jericho, the walls of Jericho. And you know, there wasn't anything easy about what God's people had to do when the Lord commanded them that they march around those walls every day. Now we know the rest of the story, and we know that it was 7 days that they had to march. They wasn't sure what all was going to go on and all of that. So every day they would get up. They would march around the walls of Jericho, day after day. I call this days and circles. Their life consisted of days and circles. They had just seen the Lord do something mighty at Jordan. And then they come here to Jericho, and now their life is in this pattern of days and circles. Just days and circles. Same thing over and over again. It's just days and circles. Now, I want you to know that this was difficult. I want you to know how this started. Joshua 6:1 tells us, now Jericho was securely shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have given Jericho into your hands, its king and the mighty men of valor. So before they ever took that step, before they ever started that progressive movement, they had a promise. God's going to give you the city. So with every step that you take, don't forget, you are walking by promise. You're walking knowing that a miracle is coming. But at first it's exciting, but then what is exciting in the beginning, nothing changes. And it becomes very redundant, very much repetition. Same thing over and over again. It's days and circles. My life consists of nothing more than days and circles. I have a promise, but I'm in a holding pattern of days and circles. Day 2, doesn't matter what you did on day 1. You got to forget what is behind you. Do it again. Take another step. Move forward again. It's days and circles, but keep doing days and circles. This had to be difficult on the Israelites. It had to be difficult on the leadership, the Hebrew priests and Levites, the leaders, because even though they have a promise, those that were in charge of carrying the Ark of the Covenant, the consistency of days and circles became very heavy because the Ark of the Covenant had to be carried. The Ark of the Covenant is something that they had to put on their shoulders, and it had to be carried. So now they're having to carry this every single day in the same pattern, nothing different. So they're having to carry this heavy load. Even though there is a promise, they're carrying this heavy load, and they're in days and circles. Their leadership is in days and circles. Their leadership is, nothing's changing right now. But a promise is coming. A promise is coming. But man, it is sure difficult to believe in a promise when the promise, nothing, not even a small stone out of the wall has fallen. Nothing is vibrating or shaking, yet I walk. There is no movement whatsoever. There's nothing. If I just had a little sign or something that maybe some dust, maybe a stone would fall off and it would let me know, hey, but I don't, all I have is days and circles. You ever feel like that, pastor? You ever feel like that, minister? You ever feel like that, teacher? I'm teaching, I'm preaching, I'm leading, I'm pastoring, and I have a promise of what God is going to do, but not even a stone has fallen off a wall. There's no shaking, there's no turbulence, nothing is, and it just seems like it's the same thing over and over and over again. It's days and circles. It's tough on the rest of the Israelites, those that follow. It's tough on churches and the ministry and the leadership of the church when it's days and circles and it's so redundant. It's repetitious. It's difficult, and there's nothing easy about it. But then those followers, they have a difficult job because those followers are having to trust God and trust who is leading them. And they're noticing the same thing. They're noticing that nothing is happening. It's days and circles. And the followers have a tendency to get confused and blame the leaders for no change. Sometimes God's people have been known to get frustrated at God, and instead of telling God they're mad at Him, they just get mad at the leaders. Instead of telling God how they feel, they just tell Moses how they feel. Instead of telling God their frustration, they just talk about the pastor. They just talk about the leadership. It's frustration. There's nothing easy. When you're in that holding pattern, when you're in that days and circles, it's difficult. It's not easy. It's not easy. You're holding on to a promise or trying to hold on to a promise, but there's no sign. All you have is what he said when you started. And anything's exciting when you start, but when you get in the middle of days and circles, the repetition of it, the redundancy of it, all of a sudden the excitement, the expectation begins to wear down. But just keep doing what you're doing. Could I say that to you tonight? Until God does what he says he's going to do. Sometimes it feels like nothing's happening. The excitement of the beginning is one thing, but after a while, when you're in days and circles, you have a tendency to feel like nothing's happening. Nothing's, just feels like it's days and circles. Listen, I know it feels that way, and I know that it's very repetitious. I know it's very redundant, but don't stop. Keep that progressive movement going. Forgetting the day before. Well, I've walked enough. You got to forget what is behind. It's day 4. Don't throw up day 3. Don't think that day 4 you get to have a break because of day 3. No. Keep going. Keep going. You may not be feeling like you felt in the beginning. You're in the middle of several days at several circles, and you're tired, and this is happening and that is happening. Don't stop. Don't stop. Keep believing. Keep moving. But Pastor, I don't feel. It's not about how you feel. Don't be defeated by how you feel. Be victorious by what you believe. Move. Keep moving. I don't know if I'm going to feel like it tomorrow. I've just been through so much today. Oh, I got to move. I've got to move. You shall march around the city, all you men of war. You shall go around the city once. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. But the 7th day is coming. And some great things are going to happen. Is there really going to be a day 7? And then you get to day 7, and he says, I want you to march 7 times around the city in one day. And it was taking them a full day just to march once. But it came to pass on the 7th day that they rose up early about the dawning of the day and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner. Doing the same thing. But it's day 7. On that day only, they marched around the city 7 times. And the 7th time it happened. Not a moment sooner. Not a circle sooner. Not a day sooner. But on the 7th, that Joshua said to the people, for the Lord has given you the city. When the priests blew the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. Shout, shout, because it's about to happen. Hallelujah. And it did happen. It did happen. All of a sudden, those walls came down. They were victorious on day number 7. They were victorious on circle number 7. Now, I want to say a couple things to you tonight. For the Israelites, it was 7 days. For you and I, the application for you and I is not a time frame of 7 specific days, but rather look at it as 7, not days, but the number 7, because 7 is the number of fulfillment. 7 is the number of completion. It is complete. At 7, it is complete. We learned this from Genesis. We learned this from creation. 7 is complete. And here's the thing. All God is going to let you know. He's not going to let you know a specific date, a specific time, but he is telling you this: when you've completed days and circles, I will do what I told you I would do when you started the first day. I will do it. So I want to say to you today, you may be wondering, when is my miracle coming? When is my blessing coming? When is this coming? On the 7th day, in the completion of what God has called you to do. But when you get to the completion of what God has called you to do, you will do more at the completion of it than you did all the days and the circles before. They completed 7 times in one day. That means that God gave them energy and strength and speed that they didn't have those other times. That's because they were in the day of completion. They were in the time of completion. When you get there, the breaking of day, something is going to turn in your spirit. Something's going to well up on the inside of you, and you're just going to know something is about to happen. I don't see anything happening, but I'm just telling you, I feel different on the 7th day. You'll feel different when you get at the border of completion. I hope you understand that. I hope you know what I'm saying tonight. And for a moment, and you ever wondered how long it took the walls to come down? It didn't take 7 days. It didn't take a day. The miracle was in a moment. Just in a little while, the stones began to fall, the walls they walked over on flat ground. Some have even suggested that the earth literally opened up because it was flat ground. The walls were so massive that for them to walk up on flat ground, to walk in on flat ground, that the earth had to open up and swallow up the walls. If they had come tumbling down and they would try to crawl over, it wouldn't be flat ground. So something miraculous happened. But it didn't take long. The miracle was in a moment. The miracle was just in a short amount of time. Here's what I'm saying to you. There were more days and circles than there was a miracle in a moment. They had to walk more than what they saw in the miraculous. The miraculous was for a moment. But they spent a lot of time, days and circles. Listen to me. There will be more days and circles than there will be miracle moments in our lives. We will spend more time walking than we do watching the walls come down. But he that endures to the end, the same shall be saved. Leaders, God's watching you. Saints of the living God, he is watching you. And if you're faithful in the redundancy, if you're faithful in the everyday, same old, There be more days in circles than there will be moments of miracles. Yet, I will keep walking. Yet, I will keep stepping. I have not apprehended yet. I am not perfected yet. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind, I press forward. I move forward. Paul said, I'm caught up in days and circles. Every few days, I'll see him do some, he'll send an angel and the prison doors will open. Every few days, we'll cast a demon out. Every few days, we'll see this miracle, we'll see that miracle. But I have more prison days than I have miracle days. I have more traveling days than I have those miracle moments. But at the end of his life, he said, I have fought a good fight. And guess what I did? I kept the faith. I kept the faith. Why is that important? Because we walk. Somebody's already finishing it for me, I'll guarantee you. We walk by faith and not by sight. There's not a stone falling off the wall. How do I know he's going to do what he said he's going to do? Don't watch the walls. Pay attention to your steps. Don't pay attention. Don't be distracted by the walls. They'll come down when it's time. And when it's time, he will bring them down. That is a promise. There will be miracle moments, but there will be more days and circles than those miracle moments. But God is watching us, and our faithfulness, our faithfulness to days and circles determines those moments of miracles. I want to encourage you tonight that no matter how you feel, no matter what's going on in your life, keep your expectation up. Days and circles. Expectation. Expectation. Little tired, but I'm still expecting. Little weary, but I'm still expecting. I didn't get up as easily as I got up the day before, but I'm forgetting the day before, and I'm pressing forward today. Let me say this. At the close of my Bible study, brothers and sisters, be faithful and endure the days and the circles.